Yeah, so hello everyone and welcome back. So today we are going to discuss @post mapping annotation in a Spring framework. So @post mapping is an annotation used in Spring MVC to map HTTP post requests to handler methods in your controller. It means that in a controller there can be multiple endpoints and that endpoints we call with particular HTTP method. So let's say if we have to call any endpoint with HTTP post method, then we mark those endpoints with @post mapping. So it helps to identify the Spring container that this endpoint is associated with basically a post method, and then we define the URI by which it know that with this particular URI and with HTTP post method, this particular endpoint is going to be called. So it is basically a shortcut for writing at the request mapping with the method equals to RequestMethod.POST. So it indicates that the method should be invoked to handle HTTP post request to the specified URL. So what is the purpose of @post mapping? So the purpose of post mapping is to provide a more specific and a readable way to define handlers for post request. By using post mapping, you can make your code more expressive and easier to understand, that it is clear indicating that a particular method is intended to handle post request, and a developer can easily see and identify that this particular method is for handling HTTP post method, right? So yeah, so like in this lecture we are going to see two annotations. First, post mapping, and second we are going to see request body. So this annotation request body is used with post, put, patch. So these are the HTTP methods like post, put, patch, and with this request body annotation is used. Basically, request body annotation is used in the parameter of the any endpoint, and it is used to receive the request body sent by the API call. So basically, it receives the request body or the payload and then transform those means JSON format payload to a Java Pojo class, right? So basically, request body annotation is used to indicate that a method parameter should be bound to a body of HTTP request. It means that with the HTTP API call, we send a request body. So that request body will be received by this, and then it will map to a particular Java Pojo class, right? So it is typically used to combination with post mapping, put mapping, patch mapping annotations to handle post, put, or patch requests accessibly. So where the data is sent in the request body, basically wherever the data is sent in the request body, then this annotation is used to capture that data and then transform that data to a Pojo class, right? So basically it map those JSON request body to the Java Pojo class. Okay, yeah, so like by seeing the example, we can understand more how to use @post mapping and @request body in your yeah, so like in your like a project. So let's move the to IntelliJ. So here we have one Spring Boot project. In this, you can see we have already I have created one controller, right? So in the last lecture, we discussed about @get mapping, where I have shown you how to use this annotation. So guys, if you have not watched this, then I will suggest you to go through this yeah, lecture. So today we will discuss about the post mapping and the request body. Okay, so for handling post mapping, I will create one new endpoint. So let me create one new endpoint, and the endpoint return type is like employee. So I want to create employee, okay, in the database. So but here I am not using database. Let's say that a scenario where you want to create a new employee information in your database, then for that we have one endpoint. Let's say this endpoint, okay, this method I created, and this method is simply returning, okay. So and in the parameter of this method, let's say we are storing employee, and this, and let's say I am simply returning this employee for now. Okay, this is the endpoint I created, and I want that this endpoint should be handled by HTTP post method. So what we can do? So we have one way to do by simply adding request mapping. Okay, in this manner also we can do, and here we can provide the value, and in this we pass the URL. Let's say we want to create employee, so this is my URL, okay, which I have added, and then I want that this method should be called with HTTP post method, right? So this method should be called with the HTTP post. So for that we need to use request method dot post. Yeah, so this is the one way in which we can indicate that this endpoint should be called with these URI and with the HTTP post method. And there is also an alternate way. So also we can use at the rate post mapping annotation directly. So what we need to do, we need to replace this request mapping. So basically in the request mapping we are putting method, right, and request method dot post. So this we can combine by simply using post mapping, and then only we need to provide this URL, right? So this is the alternate way to use the request mapping. So basically this is the combination of the method means which we define here. Yeah, so for now we can comment this out. So this is the combination of request mapping. Here we are simply defining that this is will be handled to the handled by the should be post method, and this is the URI. All right. So yeah, so in the post method we know that with the API call we send some request body or payload. So that payload should get received to this employee in the parameter of this endpoint. So for that we use here request body. So request body is an annotation which is used in the parameter of endpoint to capture the request body or the payload coming from the API call of the post method, and basically this will map those JSON request body to this Java Pojo class. And here we have this data: employee ID, employee name, and employee address. So these are the three fields, and in the request body or the payload of API call we will pass these three details in a JSON, and this will get mapped in this Pojo class, right? Yeah, so this is the use of request body to receive that payload and convert that JSON and map this to in this class, right? And those fields will get stored automatically here. So if you'll pass employee ID from the payload, then it will get stored here. When it will pass employee name, employee address will get stored here, right? So this is the purpose of request body. I hope you got this, right? What is the purpose of request body annotation? And also you got the post mapping. Yeah, so now yeah, so simply we can return this, or you can, yeah, so in our real project we call a service class. So we have one service class already I created, right? And also I'm doing auto wire. So let me use this. So employee service dot let's say I create create some employee. So this is the method I am going to create in service class, okay? And here also I am passing this employee. So let me create this Yeah, so this is my service class which I have already in my service package here. You see service, okay. In this I created this. So let me put the return type as employee, and from here we will return the employee. But in the in the real project, what we do, so generally we call to the repository, right? Already I have the repository, but here I will, in this example, I will not go to the repository because I have not means added my database credentials and all file to connect with the database. So here I have the repository also. So from here we call to repository, and then in the repository, if you are using JPA, then we directly can call to save method of JPA to save this employee information to the database. So for that we have to do more like configuration. So guys, if you want uh, that configuration also, then you can comment it out, then I will create a separate video for that also. Yeah, so for now we will simply return employee object from our service class. Okay, we will not go ahead to the repository and the database call. So we will simply come to the service class, and in the service class we have created one method, create employee, and this will simply return this employee. All right, so let's go to the controller here, and then we are returning employee. So basically here we are using add the rest controller, so this will get convert to the JSON and then it will get returned back, okay, in a JSON format. So let me save this and let me rerun this project. So I have started this project, and in the postman we will test this post method, put method, patch method, right? So get method we can test in the browser, but for the post, put, patch, we need to use any of the REST API testing tool. So for here I am using postman. Yeah, so this is already I have added like create an employee. So from where the create employee, so this is my URL, right? And here we have one request mapping the base URL xadmin. So xadmin slash create slash employee. All right, so xadmin create employee, and also we need to pass the payload, means which employee information I want to save to pass here, right? So this is my request body or payload, employee ID, employee 123, employee name, assist, and all these things. And this is the post method, right? Here I have changed to post. So if I send this, then you can see I am getting the response as a JSON. It means I am able to convert this to a JSON, and we are getting the response in a like a JSON. All right. Yeah. So in this we have seen how we can get the request back into a JSON format using the post. Okay. Yeah. So this is one example, and here in the example you can see that we are getting 200 OK status. So but generally for creating or for the create API, we used to mention 201 like 201 as a status code. So let's see how we can make this change. Okay, so there are like multiple ways to set your status code, but here we can use one more thing, yeah, so you can return response entity, and response entity is kind of like general. So here we need to pass employee. Okay, and then here we are calling our service class and then create employee. So let me capture the response from the uh, service class to here, and then in the return we can create the object of response entity, and in the parameter we have to pass which object you want to return. So employee 1 I want to pass, and then here you need to put the status code. So you can put any status code, but for create API we used to create pass for 201, so that comes under HTTP status created. Okay, so I have used response entity in a return type, and then adding first parameter as the object which I want to pass, and then status code. So here it will get convert to the JSON again. So this employee 1 object will get convert to JSON, and also it will send in the response with this status. Okay. Yeah, so let me save this. Let me restart my server again, and then let me go to the postman. Now here you see, for now we got 200. Okay, now if I hit a send button, then you can see we got 201 created, right? So yeah, so if you want to give proper status code for every API call, then you can do your changes like this, right? And in this we got the response in a JSON object. Yeah. Yeah, so this is way yeah, so this is how we use post mapping. Basically, as a developer, you can understand that, right? This endpoint is means will handle only the HTTP post method, and this is the URL, right? So it's remove the boiler code, and also it's give you more clarity that which and this endpoint is used for what purpose. And also we understand about the request body. Basically, request body is used to capture the payload or the request body which we are sending. So basically, this thing we are sending in JSON, but it is getting mapped to our employee class. How this is done? This is done by the request body, right? So request body is the annotation which is doing this. And then we have a post mapping. So post mapping method content, request mapping, and request method dot port post, right? Yeah, so I hope you understand about these two annotations. So in the next annotation, we are going to see the delete mapping, and then we will see the patch mapping. Okay, thank you.